Hello and welcome to the Author's Chaos. I am DL Golden.
And I am SF Rogers.
And today we are talking to one Atlas Creed, the author of Armitage and a friend of the pod. He is here to talk to us about the Million Lives Book Festival that he attended not last weekend, but the weekend before. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us, what was this event supposed to be? What did you expect when you first signed up for it?
So I got an email. This was the first convention I had ever been approached to attend, having heard nothing about it. And I remember I actually talked to another author friend of mine, and I was like, I just got this email about this event. This seems really weird. And they had told me, they were like, yeah, they have no history of events. I'm looking at it right now. Seems sketchy. I wouldn't do it. And I was like, you're right. I'm not going to do it until I started seeing all of the people, all of the other authors that were attending. People I had known on TikTok, Jonathan Hawker, KJ Sinclair, Savawong. I was like, I've known these people since the Between the Pages stuff. I've been working with them for a while. It'd be awesome to meet them in person. And the tables are cheap, $150 for a table is kind of run of the mill, but a little bit on the lower side. So I was like, let's go ahead and do it. I just signed up for it anyways. Plus, there were authors that I had spent other conventions with, like Kate Disney and T.L. Price. So all of that was like a big draw for me. I was like, if nothing else, I'll get to meet these people. So I finally accepted it probably around, I got the email in, let's say, July of 2024, and I decided to accept it around November of 2024. And everything seemed fine. We kept getting told, like February, they said, oh, we've got 430 something tickets sold. I wasn't expecting it to be massive, like in the thousands or anything like that, but I was expecting some attendance, and this was going to be my first book-focused festival, if that makes sense. Everything else I'd done before then was like Comic-Cons or anything like that. It was nothing central to just books. And I had no reason to suspect that this is going to be anything other than just a standard run-of-the-mill book festival, and maybe a little bit on the medium, smaller side. Considering that the month previously I had done Awesome Con, which is like 60,000 people. But again, that's movies and comic book focused. So everything seemed fine, but then we started getting these interesting emails. We were missing critical information leading up to the event, maybe like a month or two before the event. Still hadn't gotten a panel schedule, still hadn't gotten like load in, load out schedule, still hadn't gotten a map to the event. And people started like, well, hey, when are we going to get this? Like, when can we expect it? Just because there's been little communication. And the event organizer was like, well, I apologize. I found out my husband's cheating on me. We're going through a divorce right now, so bear with me. And of course, everybody's like, oh, man, I'm really sorry to hear that. Take your time, please. If you need anything, let us know. And finally, a couple weeks later, she got the map out to us, the panel schedules, the panel questions, who's going to be moderating, all of that stuff. And we thought it was okay. And then, again, I've been to events before. I know for a lot of people it was their first event, so they had questions. But the communication I was getting seemed pretty run of the mill. It was, here's your entrance, here's your load in, load out times, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, that's enough for me to work off of. I'll figure out the rest when I get there. But then a couple days, and by a couple I mean 2 days before the event, they just said to me, hey, we're going to be stopping emails for the event right now because I got 8 emails within an hour. And they even started threatening me and my son because I wasn't responding. I was like, holy crap. And all the other authors started jumping in. They were like, that's not okay. Who is it that's doing this? You shouldn't keep them at the event if this is what they're doing. And of course, we never got the name, which is fine. That's the professional approach to that. Don't dox somebody or anything like that. They were like, yeah, but they're not attending the event anymore, so nobody has to worry. I was like, okay. I showed up through the Sharp Street entrance like we were told to in the email. And I walked in and there were nothing, no signs, not even like an easel with a piece of paper that said, a Million Lives Book Festival over here. It was just a security guard. And I was like, hey, exhibit hall D. And they were like, yeah, elevator, go down 1 floor, you're there. Like, okay, well, that's simple enough. But then I get in there and the layout of the tables is way different than the map. Nothing's numbered, nothing's labeled. It doesn't say where anybody's going. So I kind of started walking around. Where do I go? What do I do? I asked people, hey, what's your table number? They're like, I don't know. I was just told to sit here. I said, okay. I was like, I thought we had a map. They're like, nope, map changed last minute. People had been loading in at 7. I was there at 9:30, so I'm behind the curve. Most desks are already taken, or most tables are already taken. And I just kind of wandered around until somebody goes, "Hey, Atlas, you're here at this one." I'm like, "All right, it's an empty table, whatever." It's not the person I saw that I was sitting next to on the map because I know Kate Disney, but that's fine. It's an empty table. I'll sit here. And I set up my table as quickly as I could with my wife's help because I had a panel in like half an hour. And got it set up in the nick of time, went up to my panel, and the moderator was just kind of like hanging out at the back of the room, just scrolling on his phone. Like, okay. So I started talking to the other authors that were on the panel, and we just kind of random tangent chit-chatting. I looked down and was like, oh, we're 10 minutes past when we were supposed to start. So my wife looks up, she goes, "So guys, introduce yourselves. Like, who are you guys?" And that's what kicked off the panel, essentially. We were in the panel. It was supposed to be half an hour. We ended up doing an hour. I come back down. I'm like, all right, time to sell some books. But there's nobody here. There's not a single person walking around that's not an author or like an assistant or something. I still sold some books. Some of the authors, like authors from across the way. I think my big draw was, I don't know if you saw, I have an overhead banner on my table. It's got, Atlas Creed and, the genres that I write. A lot of people just coming, "Hey, where'd you get that? And let me buy a copy of your book while I'm here." That's how I sold books to authors and assistants on day one. And then half an hour later, the organizer just kind of shouts, "Hey, everybody, it's 12 o'clock. We're doing an hour-long lunch break. We're closing the vending hall." I'm like, all right. So people started filing out, and I was just sitting there waiting. I was like, well, I brought a turkey sandwich here in this cooler. I'm just going to hang out here. But they didn't close the vending hall. They just told people they were closing the vending hall. So nobody was comfortable. Hold on, sorry. Hold on, guys. Go. No.
He's like shooing away children, and I just keep getting light little taps on my office door. Sarah.
Can I come in?
No.
But I sold some books to some of the authors. They closed it down for an hour for lunch break,
But they closed it, but they didn't close it.
But they didn't close it. So a lot of authors started to walk away, and they were like, "Are you going to close the doors? I don't feel comfortable having all of my books out on display if the doors are wide open, especially if there's no postage anywhere with the schedule telling people that the vending hall is not closed. Like, anybody off the street could walk in because they're not doing wristbands, they're not doing badges, they're not doing real check-in or anything like that. And like, the elevator's right by the doors, and then there's an escalator like down the way. If you've ever been to the Baltimore Convention
any like security presence that you can tell here at all, or is it just the one person that you interacted with?
It was the one person that I interacted with. There was some security like pacing at the front of the convention center, but again, no badges, no wristbands. How are they supposed to do their job?
Right.
Like,
nothing differentiated you from somebody else as an author or an attending.
Yeah. The only thing that differentiated me if I was standing behind my table and I could lift my book up and be like, "Hey, it's got my picture in it." That's how you know it's me. That's really all I could do. But yeah, I mean, they also had. So on Friday we were also competing with the weather. It was like 74 degrees and sunny. It was a beautiful day outside. Who wants to be inside a convention hall? Plus the Orioles game was about to happen at the stadium that's 2 blocks away, and there was a cannabis convention sharing the Baltimore Convention Center with us.
Oh.
And I am 100% certain that people kind of found their way over from that, because there were people sitting on the panel that I was like, they are baked out of their minds. But they were happy to be there. And then they came around and walked through it. I'm like, but I'm pretty sure that they didn't buy tickets to this. They just happened to be in the convention center at the other convention and kind of wandered over to see what's happening over here. Because again, no signs. They could have just thought this is part of the convention. Oh wow, they're selling books here too. That's so cool, But yeah, that's pretty much how Friday went. We didn't see really any readers. We did see. Okay, that's a lie. I had one reader that was very enthusiastic, was asking a lot of questions at the panel. Came by, bought my book. Her son was 20 years old, and I offered to send him a free version of my Gray Band after he bought a signed paperback, because he said that he pulls pages out of the books and makes like the folded flowers and stuff, like paper art. And I was like, that's awesome. I was like, don't do that to the signed edition. I have an edition I won't ever sell. I'll just send it to you for free. That's fine. So I got the mom's address and I sent it to them on Monday, so that, you know, when I was like, you know, just all I asked is if you could send me one back so I could see what you did with it. That'd be awesome. But yeah, that's pretty much all of Friday. I could go on, but I figured I'll let you guys jump in if you want to ask some questions or anything like that.
I saw so many things about how there was no signage. The table out front was one person, and they maybe had like a white poster board with a piece of paper taped to it that said this. And that horrifies me because we go to Kansas City to Planet Con generally every year, and they have signs everywhere. There's signs down the street, there's signs in the entryway, there's signs up the stairs, there's signs all like, there's so much signage. Someone said there weren't even balloons, and literally I paused the video and I told my husband, I said, that would have been a red flag for me, because like Planet Con in Kansas City, you know, like they have streamers and you can see the food trucks, and in the windows of the convention center they've got posters for like Planet Con and the dates for Anime Con later in the year. Like that, to me, my little planner heart has to know every step so that I can get there and get there on time, because I have time blindness. 2, if I don't have directions, I'm gonna get freaking lost.
Yeah, so I'm thankful for the security guard, but yeah, I'm used to conventions where, like, leading up to the check-in desk, there's very clear signage like check in here, and then maybe you'll get like a row of retractable banners, like advertising the event or like showing a map, or you know, like, hey, here's the exhibit halls, here's the conference rooms,
Well, here's the times, right?
Here's a schedule of everything. So if like you're in this exhibit hall, you know, here's the arts and crafts, here's the author alley. You know, we're going to be doing signings from this time, whatever. Like they have very clear signage everywhere, so you know what's happening. Overhead, you know, on the floor, they've got like actual floor stickers and stuff like that leading you where you got to go. None of that was there. And a lot of authors talked about sending like swag in. And yeah, there was the book lover one that was free, but I was like, I'm kind of low on bookmarks. I'm not going to send any of those.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, because all of that stuff disappeared. We have seen one author who sent in beer koozies that were customized with their book and their author logo and stuff. They sent 90 of them, and they got 67 of those back, which is good because they were handing them out at the ball, and people were taking them. That was accounted by some of the other authors. It's not like 23 of them were just lost.
Just got lost, right?
Yeah, they were actually taken by other authors and attendees at the ball and stuff like that, so they got 67 back. The person who acted as the official bookstore did get refunded a portion of their money, as I understand it. They sent the receipt. I mean, we have like a Discord of accountability going on. Like, has anybody gotten a refund? Has anybody gotten anything back? Have we heard anything? Just because we can't trust the organizer to be fully transparent with us. Right. We're like this web network of authors. You know, anytime we hear something, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, this happened. And then I've got like a channel for resources and receipts and
well, and that's so good, though, that you guys have kind of banded together to, like, this shared misery. You're like, okay, we're going to try and get something sorted so this isn't a complete net loss, because so many authors that do this are not made of money. They don't have the money to be wasting on merchandise that is going to get lost in the shuffle or not sell at all over the time of a 2-day, 3-day event. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, and especially considering that, I mean, I thought that a lot of the authors were local. And so when I went around asking people, you know, that's when I found like Hope Davis flew in from Sweden. L.M. Sanguinet came in from Spain. I mean, Jasmine Wallace was there, but not as an author, just as like, you know, kind of hang out with people and stuff. But still, she flew in from the UK. I believe there was one author that flew in from Canada. Percy J came in from Texas. People came in from Ohio, New Jersey, Florida. Some of them drove, some of them flew. But like that's just to fly your stuff out there, even from within the U.S., to ship your books and then fly yourself or pack your books as like, you know, carry on or something. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Well, yeah. Even so, let's say that they drove, because Daniel and I, we're Midwesterners. We drive a lot of places. Let's say that they drove. That's still renting the car. That's still gasoline. That's sleepless nights, stopping at multiple hotel stays if it takes you a while to get there. Like, yeah. That to me, but this to me feels like the wrong group of people to like target for something like this, because we are all kind of looking out for each other. Like, I got on TikTok Saturday after our event, and I was like, every person that I scrolled past who was talking about this was someone that Daniel and I have had contact with, either through the podcast or I talked to them through my other author friends, all of it. And I just remember vividly being like, oh, this is going to get us organized. This is what's going to get us organized. Like, this is going to be the catalyst.
Well, and we heard when I heard you start talking about it that you were there. I'm like, oh, I actually know somebody who was at this event. And then Sarah's like, well, I know this person and this person and this person. We're friends on Facebook. We're friends on TikTok. We're mutuals. We share information back and forth. And I'm like, oh, there were a lot of TikTok authors that attended this.
Yeah.
I could not believe the scope of it, of the people that they had roped in that just kind of got screwed out of their money and their weekend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, that was my big draw. Like, maybe a month before the event, I had worked with Carmen Chantel to do the prelude trailer for my book. It was going to be a tabletopper, essentially, at events. I'd just flip it over and let the video play over my speaker. Mm-hmm. And she was kind enough to do the monologue that I had written for my main character, Rebecca. And she did a phenomenal job. And she was at that event, so I got the chance to meet her, which was great. I got to meet Hel and Zach. I got to meet Vin. And, you know, just a bunch of authors that, like you said, have been around TikTok, and you see their face all over social media all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I thought, like, this could be a great thing if it was done well. And as you mentioned, the one person that was at the table, that was the event planner. They had no support team. They had no volunteers. It was her husband, as we later found out, is who was moderating my panel, the one who was supposedly cheated on her and they were divorcing. Yeah. And then there was this other guy, Victor, who was, you know, my interactions with him were fabulous. And he was from what I understand, professional journalist who was supposed to be moderating the panels and maybe moderated a couple, but definitely didn't moderate mine or some of the other ones. And then, of course, there was background chatter that I'm sure you've heard from some of the authors. I can't attest to that because I didn't hear it, except from the other authors, like, oh, did you hear what I just overheard and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The big thing for me, though, was a handful of authors overheard security kind of talking amongst themselves on Friday saying, hey, our contract was never finalized for overnight security. We don't have any shifts. And we were like, well, we were promised overnight security. So a lot of us just started packing up our product and just left the tablecloth and banner.
Yeah.
And so basically the next day they were setting up from scratch at 9 in the morning. You know, yeah, because you don't feel safe leaving your stuff there. Granted, the security thing was finalized in the last, like, half an hour of the vending hall hours, which, again, ending at 5 o'clock on a Friday when everybody's getting out of work seems kind of like the opposite of what you intend. Yeah. Most of the conventions that I do, if it's on a Friday, it starts at noon and goes to maybe 7 or 8. And then you'll get that trickle in of people after work, you know, like between 5 and 8, right?
Well, like the thing we just did that weekend, it started at 6 Friday night and ended at 9. Like, we could leave at 9 o'clock. Now, it's an outdoor event, so obviously we take most of our stuff home with us, but, like, it went, like, we could go from 2 to 5 for setup. We had to be set up by 4:30, and then it started at 6. But 6 o'clock, everyone's getting home from work. The food trucks are there. Like, everybody's kind of shopping. So 6 to 9, that 3-hour time period, I sold 4 books in that swatch of time. So, like, that doesn't make sense to me to just close it all down at 5 p.m. Like,
that was like, I did an event at Vintage Stock when we did, and it was free, so I can't argue much there, but they did a Friday night from 1 o'clock to 4 in the afternoon. And I sold basically nothing because nobody's off work at 1 o'clock on a Friday. Yeah. So I can't imagine an event. I can't imagine going to a convention I paid for, closing the convention hall down at 5 o'clock that night. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I have been to conventions that are only a few hours long, and you sell really well at them. I was in a convention last year called the Grimoire Exhibition, which they do all over the U.S. This one was just an hour away from my home, and it was set up in a sports complex on one of the turf soccer fields. Like, we were in the round oval of the soccer field, essentially. That was 4 hours long, but I brought 30 books, and I sold out of those 30 books in 3 hours.
Yeah.
Mostly because there was, like, a traffic jam of people, and they just all happened to be, like, slowly meandering through the line past my table. So I had a lot of opportunity to sell, but still, 4 hours. I sold a lot of books in 3 hours, but it doesn't work when it's on a Friday and when those 4 hours of selling are broken up by an hour lunch, by panels, by other things happening as well. It's really hard to make sales when you kind of clustered everything together like that. You typically would like an unbroken time period of sales that's properly scheduled, properly put out on a list for people to see wherever they are in the hall, and that's how you get things in. But I could imagine people walking in, like maybe there were people that walked in at noon and was like, when everybody had just broken for lunch, maybe they came in at like 12:15. They're like, there's nobody here. I guess nothing's happening, and then they turned around and walked out. But also at the same time, there were no Friday only tickets. Your cheapest ticket option was Saturday only, no panels, and it was $50. If you wanted Friday and panels, it was $150. I was like, you just turned Friday into a $100 day. Like, that's a huge jump in ticket price.
Yeah.
No wonder nobody was there on Friday.
That's a massive ticket value when you consider like fully established conventions like Planet Comic Con costing you $76 for a Saturday ticket.
Yeah.
$100 for an unknown is crazy.
Like if you did something like a Polycon or hell, AwesomeCon, where you have, I got Simon Pegg. When I was at AwesomeCon, I had my wife come because I got Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's autograph.
Mm-hmm.
I had to step away from the table. That's something, and they're even some of the smaller celebrities that were there. That's something you would expect to pay $150 for, but AwesomeCon tickets for a 3-day weekend are like $75. So you look at $150 for just indie authors, and don't get me wrong, I love all of the authors that were there, but we're not New York Times bestsellers, we're not USA Today bestsellers, we're not chart toppers. We're relatively unknown authors, except for in the TikTok community that we built. $150, like you said, is not going to bring people in.
Right.
No. And while we're on the subject of money here, that's not the highest tier like people paid, right? So you ended up with people at the ball. Did that cost a whole lot more? Did it not?
Yeah, it did. So there was an option to add the ball on. So if you did Saturday only, you could add the ball on for $100. So either way, the ball is either costing you $150 or the $250 ticket tier price, which would be for the full weekend plus the ball. And I can't imagine people paying that much. But to their credit, the readers that did show up on Saturday, I know how much they paid, and then they still were kind enough to buy books. In this economy, that's not easy on them.
Yeah.
Especially when you're gambling on a relatively unknown author. It's nice to get to walk around and meet new faces. Some might blow up and become really big and popular. Some might not. So you're still gambling on that, but still, that's a lot of money for them to spend and then still be able to shop around and, buy some books.
Daniel and I talk about this all the time, that like we can muster table fee, like pay a table fee if we make that back in sales. Right? Yeah. So like I'm willing to pay $150 for a 3-day event because obviously I can make that back over 3 days. I made it in 2, right? Like I made it and more in 2 just a couple of weekends ago. So like Daniel and I talk all the time that like we'll pay table fee if we know like we can make this money back. Like we have Tremendicon in Springfield, Missouri coming up at the end of this month. And we already know, like, we know where we're at. We have emails about where to park. We know, like, what times we can check in. We know what doors we're checking into. We have, they've been sending out, oh my gosh, I want to call it propaganda, but they've been sending out all of the things.
Stuff.
Yes, for it. So, like, I don't know. I'm willing to pay $150 if I can make my table fee. If I can at least make my table fee back, I can call it a wash. Like, it's fine. Mm-hmm. If there are no people there besides other authors, and I love to sell to other authors, don't get me wrong, but like that would scare me more, is like feeling like I wasted that $150 and hotel room and book inventory and bookmarks and all of this stuff. Like that would devastate me because I'm not working, right? Like this is what I'm doing.
Right.
So that to me that would gut me for the month. Like I wouldn't be able to, I don't know that I could recover, quote unquote, recover from something like that. So when I saw all of you guys talking about it, I was like, oh, that's horrifying.
And then like me, I'm local. I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't have to stay at a hotel. All I
Right.
paid were, the parking fees and the table fee. So I didn't have as much of a financial hit, but I can only imagine. I mean, there were some authors that talked about, hey, I'm coming back in a month. Is there anybody local that I can just leave my books with because I don't want to, spare the expense of shipping them back and then back here again.
Right.
So they're leaving them with local authors that they trust because some of them are coming back to like the Imaginarium Book Festival and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to think like that, just this, the people coming from Spain, I know that that's like a 15-hour flight back.
Yeah.
Could you imagine how long and quiet that flight is? If you didn't make table, let alone the hotel, the flight, the shipping costs for your
Right.
materials or anything like that,
Right.
it's miserable. And the Uber from the airport or whatever.
Like what?
Yeah. I mean, what do you even say to that? Because I feel like when I go to an event that I don't pay for and I still don't make any money, I feel like that is defeating. That is something that I'm like, okay, this was not worth my time. But to spend $1,000, $2,000 on materials, stays, and not make anything close to that back is devastating, I'm sure. And I love that you and several of these other authors that were there are shouting out the people that were there and saying, hey, you should buy their books in order to at least lighten that burden a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah. So I created the link on Indie Author Connect. I skipped the ball. I knew I wasn't going to that way ahead of time because
Sounds like you didn't miss anything, Atlas.
I saw the pictures. I heard a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm not going to the ball. They ended up couldn't get a hotel like a refund on their room like for leaving early, so they ended up going to the ball anyways. They shared pictures with me. I was like, that's depressing. Like that's really depressing. Even aside from not like even if there wasn't a book selling event, just the time you would take to get yourself dressed and ready and excited, and then that, you're basically just like that. That's almost like that's worse than a pizza party that corporate gives you for a good sales month.
Right.
That's the equivalent of that, and that's terrible. Like you walk in, you're like, "Oh, we sold really well," and then this is what you're presented: Jimmy John's and Papa John's,
Well,
John party.
and it's a cafeteria setup. It's not even a ball setup with like, heck, hang a fairy curtain somewhere. Like
Balloons on the floor or something.
Go to Dollar Tree, man. Something. It's
like my biggest thing was she made the apology video, which I'm sure you guys saw.
yeah.
And in her statement, she said the ball was not set up to standards and it wasn't set up well. And I'm sitting here thinking, I asked all the other authors, like, were there boxes of materials that could have been set up and just weren't? And people were like, I didn't see anything.
the
I'm
bar,
not-
so at this point, the bar was so low, it's in hell. Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
anything, she could have done anything. Streamer, like set up a streamer area with fairy lights, and at least they could have taken cool pictures. Like
Right. Or even just tablecloths.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's like the bare minimum tablecloth.
So I saw something about panels that one of the panels didn't have chairs and everybody
Yeah.
sat on the floor.
Yeah, so Carmen was really excited. So for a while, she wasn't sure if the panel that she had tried to set up was happening. It was the last panel of the weekend,
Mhm.
so it was like 2 to 3 o'clock panel, if I remember correctly, or maybe 1:30 to 2:30, something like that. And she was really excited, and she made her announcement: "Hey, everybody! If you want to come hear about narrators' perspectives, we're doing a panel. This is the room. We're going right now. See everybody there." And from what I understand, they had somewhere between 15 to 25 people attending that panel, which is more than any of the other panels that I know of.
Right.
And then no chairs. Everybody had to sit on the floor and stuff like that. Some people saw that there were no chairs and just like skedaddled, because why wouldn't?
Who wants to stand for a whole panel though?
Yeah, especially one that ends up going for an hour.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been there. I didn't go because we actually had some people walking around, like some
Nice.
readers, and I was like, I need to try and salvage this weekend to some degree, but I would love to go sit up there and listen to all these narrator friends that I've known on TikTok for the longest time, but in hindsight, honestly, I probably should have. I probably should have just gone and stood in the back of the room and just had a blast with them too, but that was a Saturday. My wife wasn't there. It was just me manning the table, so it would have just been
So you
I-
told us. So you told us about Friday's setup. So Saturday, how did that go? Was that any better? Like, did they have any more signs added for that, or?
They added one more sign
Oh,
over by the security guards podium, I guess you can call it. And this one was on an easel with like a Baltimore Convention Center cardboard placard with an arrow that also looked Baltimore Convention Center, and then the piece of paper taped to it that was just 8.5 by 11 printed out. A Million Lives Festival this way. And like I'm talking, like they didn't even change the font. It was just Microsoft Word Calibri font printout in big letters. It was bad. But I did notice the sign, and yeah, there were more people. It was obviously noticeable because you went from 0 to 80, so it's definitely a noticeable amount of people.
right.
So it seemed like you had like pockets of busyness.
Yeah.
But then after a while, again, you get that 12 to 1 lunch, and everybody disappears, and not a whole lot of people came back. So she told us that they had 140 people show up, and a lot of authors. Man, I think she forgot that there were at least 3 authors there that ran other conventions. The author who runs Books, Gowns, and Crowns was there. The author who
Oh,
runs the book fair at Bel Air was there. There were a couple others, I can't remember, but they were laying into her an email. She goes, "Hey, let me show you how on Eventbrite you can show what you sold and what, how many people showed up and whatever. Like, here's the breakdown instructions on how to do this."
right.
And we got photos and stuff like that. And, there was a lot of, conversation on whether these photos were doctored or not because there were weird spaces between the ends of the numbers and the slash, like this number out of this number. And it was like, there's a lot of contention there. And when you have people that do run their own cons and run very successful cons,
Well,
I mean that.
Books, Gowns, and Crowns is like a fight for your spot worthy event.
Yes.
Like, if you get a spot, you find a way to get there because
Yeah.
it's like I've been told I need to get to Books, Gowns, and Crowns, right? Like,
Yes.
knowing
and
that she was there, like, whoo.
she had a lot to say. There have been some. I wish that I could share them. Honestly, they're not my emails. These people are much more clever than me. But the emails going back and forth are not just scathing, but they are like literary burns. Like, when you put somebody in your novel and just like trash them. What is that from A Knight's Tale? Like, I will eviscerate you in fiction kind of thing.
Yes.
That's what these emails were. These emails were just like, and of course, we go to the Discord immediately after. Oh, did you see Percy's email? Did you see Callista's email? Did you see Jordan's email? And like they're doing like mic drop stuff, and it was bad. And the backlash has been worse. Of course, there hasn't been a lot of conversation about the backlash, but the big thing is we'll get like a bunch of people have made real formal and official requests like, hey, not only do I want my money back, but I want my name and likeness removed from all your social media posts.
Yeah. Like
So on and
cease
so
and
forth.
desist, basically.
Exactly, yeah. So you got a lot of email traffic like that, but then what's even worse is that the emails we get from the event organizer come at like after midnight, like 12:30, 1 in the morning. My guess is in the hopes that people are sleeping. And I think that she forgets that it's not just East Coast people that were there. There are people in all kinds of different time zones that are wide awake to respond to these emails. And now, as of now, it's been about 3 days since the last email that I've seen from them. So, yeah.
So let's just ask the obvious question here. Do you think that the intention was there to at the start for this to be a real solid book convention, or this sounds like a scam? Everything you say just sounds like this was
Well,
a scheme.
he opened with "I got invited to,"
Right.
Yeah.
and that to me is a scam.
Yeah, so the initial invitation sounds like a scam, but there were a lot of authors that did apply once they saw like the list of people going. I know I went in because of other authors. Other authors said they came in because they saw me there, and like we'd share cons together and stuff like that. I don't think that the original intention was a scam, and the reason I say that is because this author who ran the event was on people's street teams. She was ARC reader, like a dedicated ARC reader to several of the authors that had been there. Um, I don't think that the intention was there initially. I do think that they had intentions of making money off of this event to fund either future events, because they had at least two other future events lined up that they were trying to advertise for, and they have their own book release coming out that, from what I understand, they've already started kind of like buying catered food and renting out a venue and doing stuff like that. So I think that there was intention to make money from this event. I don't think the original intention was to scam people, but I do believe that the event eventually got away from the person and they were too proud to ask for help. Because, again, Books, Gowns, and Crowns, Book Fair at Bel Air, from what I understood, they had told us they reached out to them when they started noticing things were going wrong and offered help numerous times. And every single time, the person said, "No, I'm good. I've got it under control." So while I don't think it was intentionally a scam from the beginning, I think that as things started spiraling away, there was the hope that they could just kind of get away with the money and not deliver on what was promised.
Yeah.
Right.
But the downside of that is, aside from just, not having a big name author, you hit authors who have prominent social media followings.
Well, also, we're all friends with each other.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot more of us who know each other than don't.
Yes.
And that in and of itself, like, we're all doing this. Like, we're not some just, a trust fund kid that's started selling books. Like, most of us are ADHDers who are trying to run away from real life. Like, of course, we're all going to stick together and, like, pitchforks and torches. Like,
And the more emails I see going back and forth, or that I did see going back and forth, it really seemed obvious that she didn't think that we were communicating in the background, that we're just like these little islands of people separated from each other. And I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, it collectivized, and I mean, it may seem like that because we all send independent emails that are not connected to each other.
right.
We're all having conversations in the background. We're checking our information. We've got like that conspiracy board going up with all the red lines. Like, okay, she said this here, she said that. I mean, we're taking screenshots of the event Discord going all the way back to the beginning and sharing those for posterity's sake and stuff like that. It's really become just like this group project, if you will. And yeah, everybody's communicating, everybody's collectivizing and unifying, and that's probably one of the biggest positives I will say came out of this event, is how unified everybody became, and how, I don't know, how close all of the authors that were involved have kind of become, joined together, keeping in communication, helping each other get into other events, or like informing other people of other events that are going on in different areas, like, hey, this event went bad, but I know of these good ones in my area, and they still have spots open, and people have applied and gotten onto tables on those other events. So a lot of positives have come from it. But yeah, that's really the biggest positive that I can say is from that, is that unity, that communication, which was always kind of there, but is definitely stronger now after the event.
Well, and that's completely fair. It ends up being one of those things that you kind of got to find some kind of bright side, laugh, otherwise you're going to cry. Because I just can't imagine how that must have felt for some of these authors. When you are talking about events like this and trying to save people from falling into the trap of ending up in an event like this, what red flags did you see going into this that you would say, this is something I would avoid later on, that I didn't avoid this time around?
Yeah, so there were quite a bit of red flags that I ignored, primarily just because of the trust I had in other authors who trusted her, and I don't blame the other authors. I mean, their intentions were good. They came from a good place of trusting this person because they had an existing relationship. They knew them for a while. But one, yes, being invited to the event myself, while that's not necessarily a red flag, I think for me, being such a small author, it was kind of a red flag to me, and that was my initial gut feeling, was not to do it. The lack of communication and organized thought. I mean, that's really the big one, is when communication did happen, the thoughts were not organized. Everything seemed like it was thrown together last minute to just appease people's requests. I mean, the panel schedule and the questions, again, no change in font. It was barely organized. It was very quickly thrown together. And even how they structured the panels on who was speaking, there were a lot of speakers on these panels that were originally intended to be half an hour. You can't have a half an hour panel with 10 questions and have 8 authors sitting on it. It doesn't work. Like
No.
that's 5 pounds of shit in a 10-pound bag essentially. So yeah, there were a lot of red flags: the communication, the unorganized thoughts, the being reached out to first, and then for me the biggest one was the numerous attempts at sympathy pleas. Like I said, oh, I'm sorry. There was always a justification. It was always kind of like sandwiched in there. So you get like one paragraph, guys, I'm really sorry that I'm behind on this or that this is happening. Next paragraph, but a lot of people are threatening me and my kid, or my husband cheated on me, or my mom's sick and in the hospital, or something like that. And then next paragraph down, but I'll work on getting this to you, as quickly as I can.
Right.
So it was like that weird sandwich of like, I'm working on it, but my life is really terrible right now, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can. It's like this weird sandwich where terrible information was just casually thrown out in the middle of everything.
Right, and it seems obvious that they could tell that they were falling into the red on a lot of the stuff that they had, but they weren't willing to say, hey, this has gotten away from me. Is somebody willing to offer assistance on that? And that just sucks. I mean, plain and simple. Because it's not them that gets hurt by it. It's the indie authors that they invited to this thing and that shelled out the money and sat there and gave up their time. I mean, it's not free to even sit there. Your time is not worthless, and so it just all around sounds terrible.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't fun. Again, in hindsight, I probably would have just left my desk entirely, my table entirely, and just gone and talked to the other authors. I'd even joke with one of the narrators about, like, we could have just sat up and played D&D, played a round of D&D for the weekend. Like, that would have been fun. I could have been working on my book, could have been sitting there writing, making progress on that with time that I had dedicated. And, my kids were not there and I was just by myself. That's absolutely time I could have used. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that could have, should have, would have been avoided. But the real thing, I think, is by the time that the red flags piled up, it was a non-refundable ticket. It was 2 months away. Like, I didn't want to give up $150. I thought, okay, well, this is...
I can at least make my table
Exactly,
feedback.
yeah. Like, this is a shit show, but at least I can sell some books. And the table wasn't super expensive. I'm local. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of the mindset behind it. Is I don't know what you'd call that. Delusional optimism, I guess.
Maybe.
Hey, whatever works, right? Well, we focused on a lot of the negative here. Let's tie this off with something positive. What can people do in order to help support the authors that were affected by this just train wreck of an event? What can people do? Where can they go? How can they help?
So a lot of authors have put in their link trees. I have it on my website and on the website that I run, indieauthorconnect.com. There's a link right there on the homepage that'll take you to the A Million Lives recovery page. Even some of the news articles, I know NBC specifically put it in there. It's under their like support the authors near the bottom of the article, and it's highlighted. That'll take you there as well. But I've collected a list of all of the authors who I was able to reach out to. Oh yeah, look, you have Book Talk Cutie Pie. She's got it on her link tree as well. But it's a list of all the authors. I only did the ones who gave me permission and provided a link because I wanted to make sure that that was consensual. But I put them all on there. You can click on their picture, click on their name. It takes you to the link that they provided that would best support them. There's also a Viventi event set up where you can order through the authors. Some of them have put their names on there, but it's definitely not all of the authors. But yeah, if you can find the list, I know Elva Stephanie, who was the tattoo artist that was there. She's got, and My Magic Bookshelf, they've got an actual like photo slide of all of the authors there. So if you even just look up their names and try to track them down, find them on Amazon, find their websites or anything like that, follow them, share their posts, like their posts, like that's all free stuff that can help. Or if you can't afford it, buying their books helps as well. Yeah.
Awesome, and we can we'll snag that link from you and add it to the links in the description for Spotify and all that, so people can find that. Mm-hmm. Atlas, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. I know that it has been probably a nightmare to deal with, but it's helpful to people for you to come in and talk about how it went and what maybe to avoid if they're joining events and things.
Yeah, I thank you guys for having me out here. It's spread awareness about this as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the more people that we can reach, maybe we can keep this from happening in the future again, and kind of give, like, hey, this is what you look for. This is not what you want. Like, no.
And if you ever come across Archer fantasy events, just don't do it.
Just run the opposite
Yeah, run
direction.
the other way.
Gotcha. That's the sign right there. That name, Archer Fantasy.
Yeah.
Run the other
Just
way.
run. Okay, got it. Understood. Well, I am SF Rogers,
And I am DL Golden.
and this has been the Author's Chaos, and we're glad you're here. Come join us on the 22nd for an interview with Nicholas Grady.
Yep, absolutely. And we will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thanks, guys.